We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday. We had another hell of a day yesterday, a lot of things happening. Republicans elected a Speaker of the House. His name is Mike Johnson from Louisiana. He's a Trumplafuck. There's no question about it. He's against abortion. He was one of the architects to stop the certification of the Electoral College back in 2020. He wants to get rid of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So he's a great guy. He's a great guy. And that's what all the Republicans decided to vote for. He got like 220 votes. So he got well beyond the 217 he needed. You know, it's funny. This guy is clearly a Trumplafuck, a MAGA fuck, if you will. And all the moderates and the conservatives in the Republican Party want to separate themselves from MAGA. Well, we're not like them. We're not like them at all. Yeah, but you keep voting with them. So as far as I'm concerned, you're just as bad, you're just as guilty, and you'll pay the price in 2024. We'll talk more about that later. The big news, of course, is a mass shooting that's going on, still active at the time I'm recording this at about midnight on Thursday morning. They still have not caught the shooter, but this happened in Lewiston, Maine, about 45 minutes from where I was staying when I was in Maine last week. Very mellow, nice state. I wouldn't have thought something like that could have happened in a town the size of Lewiston. It's not very big. Maine doesn't have that many people in it in the first place. I mean, Portland, where I was, had about maybe 60,000 people. This town, 25 to 30,000 people. Nonetheless, some big dumb white guy with an AR-15 had this mass shooting in like 3 different locations. And I'm hearing the numbers of people being involved is just frightening. 22 dead at last report and 50 to 60 people injured. This could very well be one of the biggest mass shootings in history, certainly in the top 10. We'll talk more about that later. Of course, Michael Cohen testified in court yesterday in Letitia James' civil lawsuit. He was handing out some very damning evidence. It was freaking Donald Trump up. He was getting upset. He was kind of flailing. And in fact, the Judge Engeron, called him up to the witness stand, which was a big surprise to everybody and probably freaked Donald Trump out. And he went up there and basically what Judge Engeron did is fined him again for a violation of the gag order. That's 2 now, 1 for $5,000 yesterday, 1 for $10,000. And the judge as much as said, you're getting close to jail time here, bitch. You better cool that shit. Well, after that, and after Michael Cohen's testifying and such, for whatever reason, Donald Trump got all flustered, stood up, ran out of the courtroom. It was so unexpected that even the Secret Service going, what the fuck? And they went out and chased him. Because, you know, Donnie's pretty fast. I'm guessing he's pretty fleet of foot. Anyway, he goes out there and starts talking shit about everybody, something he just got fined for and threatened to go to jail over, but this dumb fuck would still do it. We'll talk more about that later too. I wanted to tell you, me and Grandma Boomer, my wife, we went and saw a movie yesterday. We don't go to a lot of movies. A lot of them we watch here at home. But this one we went out to, we specifically wanted to see. It was Killers of the Flower Moon. It was a story about Osage Indians, I believe, in Oklahoma, and the murders and such. I'd never heard this story before, which is a sin, but it's a hell of a story and a hell of a movie. Now, I will warn you about this ahead of time. The movie's over 3 hours long. So if you get popcorn and pop and you happen to be over 60, you're going to get up and go to the bathroom at least a couple of times, maybe 3. I'm not saying who did that, but I know him pretty well. But it's a great movie. It's well worth seeing if you have a mind to do that. Very interesting story, very tragic story. After I see a story like that, I know what went on in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with the black folks that became very wealthy. And this was about Osage Indians that were struggling, and they found oil on their land and they became rich. And of course, white people did everything they could to steal it from them. After watching that, I think I finally get why the Native Americans and the African Americans hate white people, because white people suck. They suck. Not all of us, of course, but back in those days, um, it was a different situation. And the stories you hear about how Native Americans were treated in this country, and African Americans too, it is just tragic. It's absolutely tragic. And I wish there was more I could do about it other than talk about it. Anyway, I've got some emails, so let's get to that. First one says, "Hey, Mike, I wanted to address my email I sent yesterday. You read it this morning and disagreed with something I said regarding Tom Emmer being the least offensive. I want to explain what I meant. First, I know you have a better insight into the guy than I do since he is from Minnesota. I had never heard of him before yesterday, so I looked him up online. I guess this is where the problem occurred. I took what the internet said about him as fact. The internet didn't put anything about election denier. In fact, the CNN article about him said the following. Perhaps most importantly, he voted to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. And yes, he did do that, much to the chagrin of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. That act right there is what cost him the speakership. That's why Donald Trump didn't like him. That was a flagrant rejection of Trump's oft-repeated falsehoods that the results were legitimate. I just wanted to explain why I thought this guy, he was least offensive. I believe you know this guy more than I do. Probably not. I haven't really paid much attention to him. So I will go with what you say, but I didn't just pull this out of my ass. In any event, I guess we dodged a bullet. No, we didn't. Thanks for all you do, including educating me. Hugs, Deb. Deb, I wasn't trying to admonish you. I wasn't even talking about you necessarily. I think the problem we have with the Republican Party, there are so many people that are so offensive, like the Jim Jordans, Steve Scalise, Kevin McCarthy's. Tom Emmer looks like a better choice, and maybe is a better choice, but he's not a better human being. And what we saw today is proof of that. Well, Tom Emmer didn't become Speaker of the House because Donald Trump basically 86'd him. So who do we get? We get Mike Johnson from Louisiana. Now this guy is pretty quiet, pretty calm. He dresses very nattily. He's a Christian nationalist. This guy seems inoffensive too, until you read about it. And this guy is worse than Tom Emmer. So it wasn't the moderates that kicked Tom Emmer out. It was Donald Trump and MAGA. They didn't like him because Donald Trump didn't like him. This guy, Mike Johnson, was elected in spite of the fact most moderates and conservatives probably don't like him. But there were a couple of things working here. The Republican Party was looking very stupid, not being able to pull off a Speaker of the House. So I think at this point, most the conservative and moderate Republicans would have voted for anybody just to stop the ridiculousness and try to save themselves a little bit. Well, they didn't. This guy is not a good choice, but he's a choice nonetheless. We'll talk more about him later. All right, next one. And Deb, I wasn't giving you shit. I was just making a point that Tommy Emmer, not a great guy. All right, the next email. Good morning, Mike. To understand and untangle the thousands of years of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one would have to take a wider view of mankind, religions, and selfish motives. Now, this is going to be a long one. It's coming from KCT. Always good emails, but they go a while, so just hang in there with me. The world is populated by 7.9 billion people of many races, cultures, nations, and religions. The planet has enough land resources and learned technology to house, care for, and allow balanced bordered regions for all its people. It's simply a question of whether or not we'll implement our capabilities, or will we continue tolerating disparities between liberated and oppressed people groups. It's important to note these disparities are the result of decisions we all make and conditions we allow. Consider this point about religions. It is a religious conflict. If the top 10 dominant religions of the world believed, acted on, and obediently carried out their beliefs, the question of liberated or oppressed peoples would no longer need addressing. I'm not naive. There are natural conflicts between people groups, but in most cases throughout history, there are always aggressors and oppressors acting on motives that conflict with their respective religious teachings. The religious teachings are seldom the problem. Being obedient to those teachings is a larger problem. Now, these conflicts typically arise when land, resources, or learned technology are disputed. These disputes typically generate liberated and oppressed conditions for some of the impacted people groups. Instead of an equitable, neutral application for the resources in conflict, the dominant group defiantly steps away from their religious beliefs to create a legacy of have and have-nots, followed closely by the dominant group proclaiming some fabricated justification to candy coat their aggression, i.e., manifest destiny, colonialism, and the like. Furthermore, in conflict with the basics of most religious beliefs, dominant religious groups claimed spiritual motivation and set out and enforced their beliefs onto other people groups in the name of their preferred God. The Inquisition, the Crusades, and hundreds of similar efforts across Eastern and Western cultures. This further separated liberated and oppressed peoples and caused hundreds of generations of religious division all over the world again. People stepping away from their beliefs in order to oppress other people groups for selfish motives. In the early 1500s, the theologian Martin Luther sought to answer similar questions with the publication of his 95 Theses. Basically, who are the true Christians and what is the true church? His writings were responsible for breaking up the Catholic Church, religious powerhouse of the day, and sparking the Protestant Reformation, which led to the array of Christian beliefs we have today. Luther was motivated by many disparities in the church, not least of which was the condition of peasants, the working class poor, and the oppressed. One of many points he recognized was religion should not cause or tolerate conditions that unjustly lead to the lack of human basic needs and survival. Now, Luther was just one of hundreds of activists across history that brought attention to common trends and that caused liberated and oppressed people groups and underlying motives, which brings us back to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now they've reminded ourselves of thousands of years of aggressors, oppressors, and selfish motives. We can easily see how motivations like the following advanced in normalcy. In 1937, Winston Churchill said of the Palestinians, "I do not agree that the dog in a manger has the final right to the manger, even though he may have lived there for a long time. I do not admit that right. I do not admit, for instance, that a great wrong has been done to the Red Indians of America or the Black people of Australia. I do not admit that a wrong has been done to these by the fact that a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race, to put it that way, has come in and taken their place." Now, Mr. Churchill is not a lone extremist with these dehumanizing opinions. In spite of his parallel statesmanship and global influence, this man's crime against humanity strongly diminishes his accomplishments. There are hundreds of millions of people and people groups that support views of this nature with an intent to oppress other peoples. These extremists are all over the world in positions of national leadership, religious influence, impactors of business and industry, and purveyors of news and information. Due to this fact, there will never be peace between Israel and Palestine as long as these horrifying beliefs exist. Those beliefs cause the divisive condition of liberation versus oppression. Both Israel and Palestinian folks must be liberated in order for peace to have a chance. The civil rights activist Kwame Ture reminded us in 1968 there is a difference between peace and liberation. You can have injustice and also have peace. You can have peace and be enslaved. So peace is not the answer. Liberation is the answer. What is his point? Peace is a false objective. Liberation is a more constructive objective, so peace can be the byproduct of liberation. Now, this is not to say that terrorist groups cannot be effectively dealt with by targeting a terrorist group. Does not mean punishing a people group for crimes of the terrorist. The powers of the world have failed that simple application of justice time and time again. Liberation is only possible if our global society justly distributes land resources and learned technology across all its people. We don't have to have enemies. However, it appears in many cases we're electing to have enemies. Perhaps we could make better choices. KCT. I will tell you this, if you listen to that whole email, it's equivalent to getting a doctorate degree at Trump University. So you got that to put in your pocket. But KCT, you make some excellent points. I think a lot of people profit off of war and conflicts, and that's part of the reason why these things happen. It's kind of the old Donald Trump premise. Let's create chaos. Let's create division, because divided we fall. And then there's people like Donald Trump that try to pick up the pieces and then take control. Not working so well for Donald Trump in this country anymore, but it did for a while. And like with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's going on for decades, and I tend to agree with you. There is not going to be an answer to that problem. All right, the next email. And thank you, KCT, for that email and that insight. Hi, Mike. It's with a heavy heart that I write this email today. I cannot believe that the horrible election denier was elected as Speaker of the House. What the fuck is wrong with the Republican Party, and why the fuck is no one else doing anything to stop them? I'm looking forward to your response. You have a way of calming us down and making us see the positive sides of things. I have a feeling things are going to get shittier before they get better. Do you think they will shut down the government in November? I didn't think it would make me feel so sad. Have a great rest of the week, Deborah in Southern California. What's my response? Why would they do this? The Republicans did this because they were desperate and they were looking foolish. So even the moderates and the conservatives decided, fuck, we might as well get somebody in there. But while this guy has become Speaker of the House, and in an article we'll be talking about in a little bit, he said he was ordained by God for this job, for Christ's sake. Anyway, this guy had better be careful about what he's asking for, because he just got it. This guy was a relatively unknown guy. Republicans just needed a body that would be acceptable to all the Republicans in the House of Representatives. And this guy isn't acceptable by many of these fucks, but they didn't see any other way out. They had to get this thing done, or they were going to look worse than electing this piece of shit. This guy is ultra-religious, ultra-conservative, Trump-la-fuck. Make no mistake about it. He is a Trump-la-fuck. He's an election denier. He's anti-abortion. He's anti-marijuana, which you'd expect that out of Republicans. But this guy has got some problems. And whether we'll shut down the country, I don't think that will happen. I honestly don't. Because while all of us have something to lose if the country gets shut down, the people that will lose the most are the Republicans. Now, I think this guy is going to enter the job and he's going to have to try to come off normal, more normal. So I think the idea that he's going to try to do some of the crazy things we know he's involved in, like impeaching Joe Biden or canceling Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. These are all things he said he wants to do or believes in and voted for. Here's the thing. All those things that we're hearing about him are similar things to what Kevin McCarthy wanted to do. But Kevin McCarthy wasn't successful, and neither will this guy. Keep in mind, this guy is really only going to be in office at most maybe a year because the 2024 election is coming up, and we know that the Republicans have no fucking chance in the House of Representatives. It was funny. There was something said in the vote. The problem some of these Republicans that voted for this guy, the problems they're going to have is a lot of these people, while Republicans are in districts that voted for Joe Biden. So they got to be a little more careful who they vote for. But again, they were kind of desperate at this point. They needed to get somebody in there. But there was one Republican who's from a Biden district, a Biden majority district. He voted for Mike Johnson, this fucking idiot. He voted for him. And then across the way, Representative Lawler, a Democrat, simply said, bye-bye. And what he meant by that is you do that kind of vote, it's going to kill you in the election. Because when you're in a Biden-dominated district, even though you're a Republican, they aren't going to like the fact that you supported somebody who is an election denier. I mean, most normal people know the election was not fraudulent or stolen. The facts prove that out. But still, there are some Republicans that insist on it. They insist on doubling and tripling down because they don't want to piss off Donald Trump. Well, between now and 2024, Donald Trump is going down. He won't have the power. He doesn't have the power he once had. And it's going to go away quickly with all the shit that's going on and some of the things we're talking about. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. They couldn't do anything with Kevin McCarthy, Deborah. They can't do anything with this clown. I wouldn't get too worried about it. And as far as shutting down the country, that is the last thing the Republicans want to do. I mean, the reasonable Republicans. There might be 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 Republicans that want the country shut down, but the vast majority don't want that. And if they allow it to happen, they are going to take a fucking beating from their constituents. So I don't really think that's going to happen. I think what they said is they probably couldn't come up with a final answer, that they're more than likely going to come up with another CR or continuing resolution, extending it to January, and then we'll worry about it in January. That's more than likely what's going to happen. So don't worry about the country being shut down, and don't worry about the Speaker of the House being able to do anything. Kevin McCarthy couldn't do it. You got a slim majority, and they're going to start losing representatives like George Santos, like Matt Gaetz, and like anybody else who gets indicted by Jack Smith. So don't worry. Think about everything that's been accomplished in the House of Representatives since the Republicans have taken the majority. It's all been decided with the help of Democrats. Without the help of Democrats, they haven't been able to do shit other than elect this guy, and they did it out of desperation. All right, next email. Hey, Mike, I trust you are well. Your reaction to the Jenna Ellis press conference was priceless. Unfortunately, I was trying to drink my morning coffee when I started laughing. It wasn't pretty, but I'm fine now. She missed her calling. She should have been an actress. I certainly can't make myself cry and demand. That's a special talent. One other thing, I know it was a busy news day, but you failed to mention a major highlight. Trump discovered the U.S. spells us. Yeah. I saw that. I just didn't see that as any big deal, but it does point out Donald Trump's ignorance. He was very proud of himself for this feat. It only took him 77 years to figure it out. It's not possible to underestimate his ignorance. I enjoy the show, man. Keep up the good work. Well, first of all, regarding Donald Trump's thing, he was talking, he was kind of riffing as he does. And he says, you know what the U.S. spells, as in the United States? It spells us. Oh my God, what a revelation to have. And what a clever thing to bring up, Donnie. You're so fucking clever. In terms of Jenna Ellis, this is what I said about her. I said, Jenna Ellis spent a lot of time on television talking loud and proud about stolen elections and Donald Trump and all this shit. Now she has to, in fact, I saw one moderator tell her, Jenna, you're going to regret saying this stuff. You're going to be embarrassed. And she just kept rattling on. She was by no means passive about this shit. So now she admits to being guilty. She pleads out and she stands up in court and cries and says, if I only knew then what I know now, if I would never have worked for Donald Trump. If you knew then what you know now. The moment they said there was election fraud and they had 60 court cases and the proof was coming out in reams, you knew then. You aren't sad about what you did. You did it for your own benefit, for the benefit of Donald Trump. You got caught. That's what you're fucking sorry about. You're sorry you got caught. And now you have to pay a price for it. You've pled out. I don't know what she's going to get, whether it be probation or what have you. But Jenna Ellis, there is no sympathy. I have no empathy for you. You're a Trump-la-fuck piece of shit from the beginning. And even now, as you're flipping on Donald Trump because he didn't pay your legal bill or he didn't support you like you think he should have, I don't feel sorry for you now. You made the choice. And when big boys and big girls make choices, they have to deal with the consequences. So you got some fucking consequences. Don't cry about it because you sure sounded like you were positive and sure sounding tough when you were on television prior to this point. So fuck you, Jenna Ellis. We don't give a shit if you're crying. In fact, watching you cry, I took joy in that. I enjoyed watching you cry. I hope you're struggling. All right, the next email. Hi, Mike. Holy shit, we expected something was going to happen this week, but I wasn't expecting two bombshells going off on Donald Trump. First, hearing that Jenna Ellis also took a plea was big news. She also had to take a felony. Consequences, Jenna. That makes 3 attorneys that have pled out, and now anything they said with Donnie will come out. Attorney-client privilege won't save Donnie. No, now all 3 will have to testify, and there is nothing Dirty Diaper Donnie can do. I'm sure he's going to threaten to sue or appeal or some other nonsense, but the walls are closing in. He might insist on attorney-client privilege. What Donnie probably doesn't understand is that attorney-client privilege goes away when there's a crime being committed. And since one of your lawyers, each of your lawyers has admitted to crimes, there's no client-attorney privilege. Now, this emailer goes on to say, if that wasn't enough, we found out that Mark Meadows got a full immunity deal from Jack Smith. If I understand how those deals works, it's much like a plea deal in that it only works if Meadows testifies completely and honestly. If he does the deal, if he doesn't, the deal is broken and he can be charged. That's exactly right. He cut a deal with the DOJ. If he doesn't live up to his responsibilities, it's jail time for Mark Meadows, and he fucking knows it. I'm sure the Trumplefucks will try to spin it with this, that this is a good for Dirty Diaper Donnie, but in reality, he is sunk. Muscles and nursing reminded me that there is evidence of Meadows having destroyed evidence. Whatever he's given up about Trump must be huge if Meadows gets full immunity. That's true. It has to be huge because giving that kind of immunity is extremely rare. This tells you that their target, their goal is Donnie Trump and Donnie Trump alone. He gets to flip, and Donnie's going down. You can't have the chief of staff testifying against you because they know where the bodies are buried. They know everything. And of course, I mentioned before, it's not just Donnie Trump that he's flipping on, because especially on January 6th, he was the conduit uh, between Donald Trump and members of Congress and the Ginny Thomases and the Roger Stones and the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and his family members. So he's telling on all of them. And that's probably why he got immunity, because he can take down multiple people, including Donald Trump. Donnie is definitely going to be shitting his pants and tossing ketchup at the walls, the emailer says. Any unindicted co-conspirator or sitting members of Congress should be really worried. As I said about Georgia, they should be tripping over each other to cut deals. I doubt Jack Smith will offer many more deals for full immunity. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out soon that he already has worked out a similar deal in Georgia. Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. See, I think people are under the impression that anybody who's charged with a crime can work out a deal. That's not true. The earliest deals are the best deals, and as they get deeper into it, the deals are less positive for the criminals. And there comes a point where they don't have to give deals. Maybe Fani Willis doesn't believe she has to give a deal to Mark Meadows, which means Mark may have immunity in the federal courts, but he could still go to jail in Georgia. Now, he might have cut a deal with Georgia, but I don't know that she has to or that she even wants to. I think she looks at him as almost as guilty as Giuliani and Trump. Maybe she wants to take down those top three. Maybe she's not just looking at Trump. Maybe she's looking at a few multiple criminals to take down. We don't know for sure. I'm just supposing here. Emailer goes on to say, our new speaker is ridiculous. At least we have one, though this one is dangerous. He doesn't understand the concept of separation of church and state. We have some saving grace, though. The Democrats control the Senate. Joe Biden is president. The Republicans have such a slim majority, they couldn't override a veto if they needed to. The voters need to pay attention to him and his ideals. If they do, there is no way the Republicans keep the House in 2024. Exactly. Somebody ought to take a deep dive on this guy, too, because anytime you have somebody who looks like he does and is ultra religious, you know there's some skeletons in the closet. You want to be Speaker of the House? Okay, get ready for the shit to fly, because if you got any dark secrets, that shit's coming out. Emailer says, lastly, I saw that Sidney Powell had posted on social media about how she was forced to plead. Oh, that's not a good move. She said that the election was really stolen and all the usual Trump-la-fucks talking points. This should be a violation of her plea deal. I agree. I'd love to see Fani Willis rescind her deal. She's too dumb to realize how good of a deal she currently has. Yeah, if anybody could fuck it up, it would be Sidney Powell or Donald Trump. Anyway, the emailer ends with, thanks, Eric. That is Eric from Iowa. Eric, thank you for your email. All right, we're going to get down to the business at hand, some of the news stories that we've already talked about. We'll go a little more in depth, but we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, the tragic story from last night. Now, I'm going to give you some facts about this story, but you have to understand it as I'm recording this is at 12:30 early Thursday morning. Some things may have changed by the time you heard this podcast. Who knows what time of day you're listening? So, um, as you listen to it, if I'm giving you wrong information, it's because it's the only information I have right now. First and foremost, there was a mass shooting in Maine, which is a little surprising. I was in Maine last week in Portland, and Maine doesn't have a big population, and it seemed like a very quiet, calm, very nice town with nice people. Portland was. I went in other parts of Maine and found something similar, but we had a mass shooting there yesterday. And this mass shooting was where a man opened fired at 3 locations in Lewiston, Maine on Wednesday night, killing, as I understand it, at least from last night, 22 people and injuring 50 to 60 more people. You have to understand how big this is. This, if it stands the way I know it to be right now, it will be in the top 10 or higher in mass shootings in the history of this country. The other thing you have to know about this is Maine is a permitless carry state, meaning there is no permit necessary for carrying a gun, and you can carry the gun anywhere. In this particular instance, it was a white guy, because we've got plenty of video of him doing what he's doing. We even see his face. We even see the car he was driving, but he's carrying an AR-15. Now, I had somebody comment on a TikTok I did. I said, well, if you want to have gun laws, well, then maybe with drunk drivers killing people, we should outlaw cars. Now, that's a weak argument. It's a fucking very weak argument. First of all, nobody's suggesting take away guns completely. I will say this, though, if somebody's done a mass shooting or any kind of violent crime with a gun, they should be restricted and never have the option to carry a gun again. I'm sorry if that hurts some Second Amendment freaks' feelings, but that's the way it should be. You fuck up with this, you shouldn't have a second chance to do more destruction. But anyway, we don't know anything about this guy. At the point I'm recording this, they haven't caught him as yet, which is a little disturbing. I mean, Maine doesn't have that many people. There is some wooded areas. He could go hide out, I suppose. He could have left town. He could have gone to ground. He could have shot himself and laying in a ditch someplace. Nobody knows for sure, but we know he killed 22 people and injured 50 to 60 people. And this has got people nervous in Lewiston and probably other parts of Maine. Like I say, I was in Portland, and that's only 45 minutes away from Lewiston, where all this activity happened. Residents and business owners are told to stay inside and off the streets. They haven't caught this guy, at least at this point. 2 law enforcement officials told the Associated Press dozens of people also have been wounded. And I'm hearing now 50 to 60 people. The officials were not authorized to publicly discuss details of the ongoing investigation. Now, Lewiston police, in an earlier Facebook post, said that they were dealing with an active shooter incident at Shemenji's Bar and Grill and Spare Time Recreation Bowling Alley about 4 miles away. The Androscoggin County Sheriff's County Sheriff's Office released 2 photos of the suspect on its Facebook page. They're pretty clear photos that showed a gunman walking into an establishment with a weapon raised to his shoulder. The police said, please stay off the roads to allow emergency responders access to the hospitals. On its website, Central Maine Medical Center said staff were reacting to a mass casualty, mass shooter event and were coordinating with area hospitals to take in patients. A woman who answered the phone in the emergency department said no further information could be released. Now, Melinda Small, she's the owner of Legends Sports Bar and Grill, said her staff immediately locked their doors and moved all 25 customers and employees away from the doors after a customer reported hearing about a shooting at a bowling alley less than a quarter mile away about 7 p.m. Now, of course, then the police flooded the roadway, and a police officer eventually escorted everyone out of the building four at a time. Everyone in the bar is safe, thankfully. Now, this woman said, "I'm honestly in a state of shock. I'm blessed that my team responded quickly and everyone is safe. But at the same time, my heart is broken for this area and for what everyone is dealing with. I just feel numb." The alert for Lewiston was made shortly after 8 p.m. as the sheriff's office reported that law enforcement agencies were investigating 2 active shooter events. We now hear there is a third one. Officials issued an update around 10 p.m. for what they described as a manhunt. Avoid the area until authorities give you an all clear. As I say, at the point of this recording, they still had not caught the shooter, and they seemed a little confused as to where he is. Now, they have a picture of him. That should be helpful. I don't know if they get any face recognition technology that we could identify who this person was. The car he apparently was using was an SUV, like a silver or white colored SUV. They found that car. So now either this guy had access to another car or is on foot right at this point. But when you think about the situation where a guy is able to walk into 3 locations, do 3 mass shootings, and still not get caught, it tells you the police department is having problems, or this was well planned out. I'm guessing the latter. We don't know if this is a terroristic attack or if it's a hate crime or what the fuck it is. But we've got some big dumb white guy with an AR-15 shooting people in a state that has a permitless carry law. You have to wonder if the people of Maine might look differently at this. You know, everybody talks about, you're going to take our guns. No, let's just take the ones that could kill 22 people, like an AR-15. Now, if this guy did the same thing with a pistol or even a deer rifle, he would never have been able to kill that many people, and he would probably be dead right now. But with an AR-15, he can kill a lot of people very quickly, and that's exactly what he did. All right. That's a sad story. I hope that comes to a conclusion at some point after recording this. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they caught the guy and we're getting some sense of calm in that part of the country. You got to imagine if you're in Maine and you live anywhere near the area, you're scared to death to even go outdoors, as well you should. So hopefully this gets resolved overnight and we get some calm back in the area of Lewiston, Maine. As I was talking about earlier, the trial continues in New York. Letitia James' lawsuit against Donald Trump, civil case about Donald Trump's behavior and committing fraud while he was in business. Now, we know that Michael Cohen also testified yesterday, and Michael Cohen said some shit that was pretty damaging to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was having difficulty with it. In fact, Donald Trump stormed out of the courtroom on Wednesday amid testimony from his former attorney, Michael Cohen, in a New York civil fraud trial concerning the company, Trump's company. President's Secret Service agents were caught off guard and had to chase after him as he abruptly left the room, according to reporters. Trump exited the courtroom shortly after Cohen admitted that Trump had never asked him to inflate the numbers of his financial statements. Now, once outside, Trump declared to reporters before walking away, "The witness just admitted that we won the trial and the judge should end this trial immediately." Well, Donnie, that's well and good, but that's not going to happen because the fact is the judge already found you guilty in his summary judgment. They're just trying to figure out how much you're going to have to fucking owe. So nice try, Donnie, but it's not going to work. Now, one of Trump's attorneys then asked Judge Arthur Engeron to declare a verdict in the trial, to which he replied, absolutely denied, noting that there's evidence all over the place supporting the New York Attorney General's $250 million lawsuit against Trump, three of his adult children, and the Trump Organization. Now, shortly before Trump's outburst over Cohen's remarks, Engeron handed down a $10,000 fine against the former president, ruling that he had violated a gag order banning him from discussing the judge's staff when he spoke to reporters earlier during a break in the trial. So he violated the gag order that same day. Judge Engeron gave him a $10,000 fine. This is what Trump said. The judge is a very partisan judge with a person who is very partisan sitting alongside him, perhaps even much more partisan than he is, Trump said. Engeron's clerk was sitting next to him. But when questioned on the witness stand, Trump claimed he was speaking about Cohen, who was sitting on the other side of Engeron in the witness box during his second day of testimony. Are you sure you didn't mean the person on the other side? Engeron asked, gesturing to his clerk. Yes, I'm sure, replied Donnie. Engeron then dismissed Trump after about a minute of testimony and handed down the penalty despite Donald Trump's protest. I hereby fine you $10,000, which is on the liberal side, to be paid within 30 days, he ruled. The fine comes in the fourth week of a trial that's supposed to go 3 months. I have a feeling the next time around, we're not going to be looking at fines. He can't keep doing this without getting some kind of accountability. And the fact is, the fact is he can't keep fining him. He's going to have to do something. And we know that Donald Trump cannot help himself. He's going to be doing it again. He will violate again. And then it will be interesting what Engeron says. There's certainly been enough second chances. A $5,000 and $10,000 fine are not anything that's going to slow Donnie Trump down. He's going to push it to the limit. So the judge better be ready to take it to the limit. As we were talking about before, Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, in his first remarks after being elected Wednesday afternoon, told members of Congress that Scripture and the Bible are clear that he has been ordained by God. Yeah, that's your new Speaker of the House, a fucking nutcase. I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in the room last night, Speaker Johnson declared. This is what he said. Tell me this motherfucker's not a narcissist. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you and all of us, and I believe that God has ordained and allowed me, each one of us, to be brought here for a specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it. Well, that's interesting, Mike, because if God raised you up at this point, he must have done the same for the Democrats, because you have a slim majority and the Democrats are fighting the opposite against you. So are you telling me that God himself put you where you are to be in contrast with where the Democrats are, to create this conflict and stymie the country from doing anything? You figure that was God's work? Doesn't God offer us free will? Yeah, you can't blame God for fucking everything. I mean, if you really look at it, we are all responsible for the things we do because of free will and because we're all kind of part God. So don't we make those choices? Don't spew your religious bullshit. You take what's in the Bible and you pervert it and you try to make it real. It's not real. Now, later speaking outside on the steps of Congress, Johnson again mentioned scripture. What about the separation of church and state? I mean, that's like in the Constitution, and I'm sure God raised Thomas Jefferson up to write that Constitution. Critics have characterized Speaker Johnson, who hails from Louisiana, as a Christian nationalist. An evangelical Christian, he has voted for a national abortion ban and co-sponsored a 20-week abortion ban, earning him an A-plus rating from the anti-abortion group Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Yeah. This guy, this guy is trying to tell us he's ordained by God. So are you telling me God had this plan where there would be 3 other candidates before him? He would be 4th on the list. Nobody's ever heard of him. And this was God's plan. We're going to get rid of Kevin McCarthy because apparently God doesn't like him. Then we'll get rid of Steve Scalise because God doesn't like him. And then Jim Jordan, of course, God doesn't like him. And then we'll finally get to Mike Johnson. I got to think God could have gone a more direct route. Wouldn't you have been the first choice if you were in fact ordained, you stupid piece of shit? I would love to interview these motherfuckers. They annoy the shit out of me because they use the Bible and God to do their bidding, and their bidding is unethical at best and illegal at worst. He goes on to say, on the day the Supreme Court voted to overturn Roe v. Wade, he celebrated, calling it an extraordinary day in American history that took us almost a half century to get to it. He hosts a religious podcast. Well, of course he does. With his wife, and considers Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, one of the founders of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus, as a mentor. So you didn't vote for Jim Jordan, but you voted for somebody who he's mentoring. He's mentoring the mentor who has never passed a bill, who is denied sexual abuse, who has tried to overthrow this government. This is who your Speaker of the House is. Now, all you moderates and conservatives said, oh, I don't want to go near Jim Jordan. That's just too far. But you were more than happy to vote for Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson's not going to do well in this position. He's not equipped mentally or in terms of experience and those sorts of things. He will dog paddle just like Kevin McCarthy did, and he's going to get pushed around. And I tell you this, because he's so inexperienced, he's relatively new to the House of Representatives. Because he's so inexperienced, wait till he sits down with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's going to tie that motherfucker in a knot. Now, last year, the Times added Mr. Johnson introduced a bill that prohibited the use of federal funds for providing sex education to children under 10 that include any LGBTQ topics, a proposal that critics called a national version of Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Mr. Johnson called the legislation common sense. Well, Mr. Johnson, let's see how much you get passed, because once it gets to the Senate, even if it gets through the House, which I doubt, you're going to get shut down. And over the next year, you're going to accomplish fucking nothing. Zero. You're going to be too busy trying to impeach Joe Biden still. You're going to be, well, here's the thing. With this kind of attitude, and I've said this before, putting this guy in the speakership has pretty much guaranteed that the Democrats will take control of the House. So enjoy your year in office, if you even get that. Enjoy your year in office, because you're going to disappear next time around. You'll probably be up for re-election, and you will look like a complete idiot, an embarrassment to your constituency, and you will be fucking gone. Not only not Speaker of the House, not a representative, you're going to have to go back to teaching fucking Sunday school and spewing your bullshit. All right. Oh, here's a good story. Democrat in trouble. You remember Jamal Brown? He's the Democrat from New York. Well, he pleaded guilty after he pulled a fire alarm in the House of Representatives office building as a government shutdown threat loomed last month. Come on. Really, Jamal, that's the best you got? The New York lawmaker is being charged on a misdemeanor count of pulling a fire alarm, which carries up to 6 months in jail. On September 30th, camera footage captured Bowman pulling the alarm as the House sought to pass a resolution to keep the government open. Due to the alarm's activation, the Cannon office building on Capitol Hill was evacuated, resulting in a police investigation. Capitol Police ultimately presented an arrest warrant to the D.C. Attorney General, according to NBC News. This is what I'm saying. We have a lot of problems with the Republicans. We've got to eradicate those motherfuckers because they are the biggest part of the problem. But we've got some people on the Democratic side that aren't the sharpest crayons in the box. And we've got people on the Democratic side that aren't serving us. So once we get rid of the Republicans, we got to take a microscope and look at some of these Democrats because some of them are fucking idiots. Now, Jamal Bowman may very well be a good representative, but how dumb do you have to be? You first try to play that scheme. You do it in a government office building in Washington, D.C. Did you not consider there would be cameras proving that you fucking did this? I mean, we've seen all the cameras from the Capitol with all the tours given by Republicans. Did that not enter your fucking mind? All right. The police said our agents gathered all the evidence, packaged it up, and sent the entire case with charges to prosecutors for their consideration, Capitol Police said in a statement. Now, Bowman has been ordered to be arraigned on Thursday morning, today. Will he get time in jail? Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it. Bowman, according to the arrest warrant, the agents that he saw the nearby doors with a sign reading emergency exit only push to open. So he pushed on the door and pulled the lever next to it, which must have been an alarm. That's not what happened. I saw the video. You specifically walked over to the alarm and pulled it. You can try to claim you did it by mistake, but you didn't. Bowman advised that usually when votes are called, all doors are open, and the door is usually open, the second floor door leading to an Independence Avenue. The defendant further stated that the door was a usual door he uses. The defendant advised that he then went to a Democratic meeting and a vote at the Capitol Hill. Then the House Sergeant at Arms contacted him, the warrant states. Bowman told the agent that he didn't intend to cause a fire alarm and didn't intend to disrupt or obstruct a congressional proceeding, but that's what you did. Then stated that he needed to get a lawyer and wouldn't make any further statements. At the time the event occurred, Bowman's spokesperson issued a statement that was widely mocked on Twitter, formerly X, formerly known as Twitter, stating that Congressman Bowman did not realize he would trigger a building alarm because he was rushing to make an urgent vote. The congressman regrets any confusion. In a statement released Wednesday, Bowman agreed to pay the maximum fine of $1,000 and will provide a formal apology to D.C. So, $1,000 and an apology. That's the very least you can expect. He said, I'm responsible for activating a fire alarm. I'll be paying the fine issued and look forward to these charges being ultimately dropped, the lawmaker said in a statement. So, what the fuck can you do? What the fuck can you do? Emotions rise and you do dumb shit. MSNBC's Ari Melber confronted Matt Gaetz for condemning the former House Speaker for cooperating with Democrats, asking, why is it okay when you do it? Now, Melber played a recording of Gaetz on the House floor saying, working with the Democrats is a yellow brick road that's been paved by Speaker McCarthy. This is the question I've been dying to ask you, Melber said. I haven't seen you since this all went down. Look at this chart, Congressman Gates. You were in the minority. You partnered with over 200 Democrats to oust Kevin McCarthy. So the question to you, and this is not a left or right question, as you know, there are conservatives and Republicans who raised this issue with you in recent times. Why is it bad when Kevin McCarthy partners with Democrats to keep the government open? It's not okay, but it's okay when you do it to actually shut down basically a functioning House for weeks. Matt Gaetz didn't have a lot to say about it. You know, he does what they do. They divert, distract, they talk loud, they talk about other things. And that's an excellent point for Melber to ask. The fact that he didn't get much of an answer isn't surprising. But the real thing that you've got to consider in this situation is, isn't that what the essence of Congress is? Both sides working together, compromising, negotiating. Isn't that in essence what Congress is supposed to do? But now Matt Gaetz and other Republicans are calling it a bad thing or bad form to negotiate with Democrats. I will tell you this, when it came to the Speaker of the House, the reasonable Republicans should have negotiated with the Democrats to come up with an acceptable Speaker of the House. By not doing that, they pretty much lost their jobs. They certainly will lose the majority, but many of these people, especially those in Biden districts, are not going to get reelected because this guy is not just a conservative. He's a fucking nutcase. He's a religious nationalist, a Christian nationalist. And then something came out, you know, you would presume he's racist. And then it came out that he has a black son. Now, a lot of his friends on the Republican side were even confused about that, but there was a picture of him with a younger black boy. And I don't know if it's true that he has a black son or not. I mean, it reminds me of Matt Gaetz saying he had a Hispanic son, which he didn't. He just lived with this guy who was a brother to a former girlfriend. Now, I don't know what the scam here is with Mike Johnson, but as I said before, maybe we need to look into Mike Johnson. He seems a little radical. He seems like he's batshit crazy. And if that is true, there's got to be some dark shit in his past or dark shit in his present. People like this don't just appear completely pure. I've said this before to people. The more overt, and this is my experience. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine. You're more than welcome to do that. But in my experience, the more overtly religious somebody is, the more despicable they end up being. And I just have this feeling about this Mike Johnson. He's too radical. He's too willing to continue with this election fraud thing when it's been proven over and over and over again. Now, as I said, he was one of the architects in trying to stop the certification from the Electoral College vote that elected Joe Biden. You have to wonder, in upcoming superseding indictments, even though he's a relative unknown, if he may be on that list. Does he think he's on that list? Does he think by being Speaker of the House he'll be saved? I've got news for him. Nothing's going to save you if Jack Smith has you in his sights. Now, I don't know if he does, but there are going to be some sitting members of Congress, and what happens to them will be interesting. Now, just because they get indicted doesn't mean they leave, as we know. George Santos hasn't left. A lot of people who have gone through some shit on the Republican side that should be expelled from Congress have not, because they don't have the courage to do it. But this Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, he may be surprised how this turns out for him. And I'm going to want to ask the question, if you tell us now that you're Speaker of the House because you are ordained by God, when this goes south on you and you end up worse for wear after this is all said and done, can we then blame God for putting you in this position? Can we blame God for basically, instead of raising you up, is in fact punishing you? And then if God is punishing you, why is he punishing you? What the fuck's up with that, you stupid son of a bitch? While getting him elected Speaker of the House isn't a great thing for the country, there wasn't much that was going to happen between now and the election anyway. This may be the straw that breaks the camel's back and makes it so we don't see a Republican majority in the House for a while, for a long while. And 2024 is coming quick. We're about a year out, little over a year out from the election. We'll see how much they enjoyed embracing the anti-abortion stance, the free and easy gun stance, the insurrection stance. We'll see how that plays out for you in 2024, but I can guarantee you this, it's going to be worse than what you saw in 2022. And that didn't go fucking well. That did not go well for you at all. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.